Alright, in today's video, I'll be talking about the latest knight that's been added to the game, the God of Death, Thanatos. So as usual, I'll be talking through his skills, his clothes, and also his constellation. One of my subscribers also recommended for me to talk about a liar and also artifacts, so I'll also briefly mention them here as well. Alright, so now let's start off with his ultimate. So his ultimate basically deal damage to everyone, so it's an AoE attack. And what it's also able to do is that it's able to reduce the max HP of the target by 5%. At the highest level, it actually increased to 10%. And basically, this is really interesting because it's decreasing the max HP. And what that normally means is, let's say, if the enemy start off with, let's say, 1,000 HP, you do some attack, but then if they do have a healer, let's say Arrow Smooth, etc., they will be able to heal themselves back up to 1,000 later on. However, if you actually reducing the max HP by 10%, so let's say you meant to reduce it to 900 instead, even if they heal themselves back up, it's only going to be maximum 900. So this basically makes it slightly easier for you to end the battle where the opponent may have, let's say, 3 healers with multiple number of defensive now, because normally in those cases it's really hard for you to kill them off when they're constantly healing each other. But this basically allows you to a way to do that, which is really useful because right now, especially in PvP, you will see that everyone kind of plays an Arrow Smooth, a Sinner God Close, and sometimes even another second or third healer as well. And the battle goes on a really long time nowadays in PvP. So this certainly helps in the meta. So I definitely think he will have an important role in the meta. Next, we have a looping skill, and basically this looping skill is able to target the enemy with the lowest HP. So in a similar way, how for example, Pandora targets the enemy with the lowest HP. So this always makes sure you are damaging the enemy, which is the weakest. And also it reduces its max HP permanently as well. So very similar to his ultimate. This is another way for him to kind of cutting down the maximum HP limit. And basically what this one is going to do is it's going to reduce it based on how much they have already lost. So and this is I'm going to draw a lot of similarity to what Pandora does. What Pandora does is that when an enemy is slightly weaker than anyone else, then Pandora's ultimate is always going to focus on that single person and have a really nice chance for you to one shot. And even though it's a single target, because of this almost like a homing system where it always focuses on the enemy with the lowest HP, it works really, really well in practice, even though it's single target. And this is going to be very similar to that as well, because the lower the HP, which by default he targets the enemy with the lowest HP, and the lower HP that person is, the more HP or maximum HP limit will be reduced. And this is actually going to be really nice. At the start, you may not think it's too worthwhile because it's only reducing the max. Well, I mean, it does damage, but it also the main effect is reducing the HP limit. Whereas I guess a lot of time, unlike Pandora, it's actually doing pure damage. So what you'll find is that Thanatos, even though he's targeting the enemy, which is the fragile, he's not normally able to kill off that person instantly because he's like half of the damage is done to the HP limit rather than pure damage. However, it's still very beneficial in the long run because basically once you're reducing that person's HP limit, there's just no way for them to get back up to high HP again. So even though he may not be able to kill that person off instantly, it's still very worthwhile in kind of in the long run of the battle. So it's still a very good skill. Then we move on to his passive. And this passive is quite interesting. It doesn't sound very powerful right now, but once we get to his clothes, his constellation, etc., I'm going to talk about more about why this is actually really nice. But right now, basically what it says is it attacks a target whose HP percentage is higher than his own, then he will additionally increase crit rate by a certain amount and also damage by a certain amount, and for only 6 seconds. However, let's say you are basically you want to attack someone in order to trigger this passive. Afterwards, even if you're not attacking that person anymore, let's say you don't have another Luminous skill or have another ultimate, which is not attacking that person, as long as it's still within those 6 seconds, then you still retain of those buff, which is important. The thing which I said may not make it sound super strong right now is that basically the condition for this passive to trigger is that the current HP of the enemy have to be higher than Santos his own HP, which I guess his ultimate and his looting skill kind of helps because you are reducing the enemy's max HP. And if you let's say the enemy is only at I want to give a nice number. So let's say the enemy starting off with 1,000 HP, and right now he is only at 400. So that's 40% of HP percentage wise. Now, if you're actually reducing that enemy's max HP, so let's say if you reduce that enemy's max HP down to 800 instead, then what you can see is that you indirectly increase the HP percentage of the enemy, even though the enemy's HP itself haven't changed. And this is kind of the trigger condition. Now, having said that, his ultimate is able to reduce the max HP, but the one which really reduces a huge amount of max HP is really his looping skill, and that only focus on the enemy with the lowest HP. So you may not always be able to trigger this passive constantly right now, but that will improve with his close and constellation. So don't just wait for that. I'll explain that later on. But you can already see kind of how this works. It's basically he's cutting down the enemy's HP limit, which basically benefit in long run to prevent the enemy keep healing back up, but also allowing him to indirectly then gain lots of buff as well. And then the last one, his trigger skill, which is really, really interesting and also makes him kind of immortal, which is basically that when he dies for the first time, then he is still going to be alive. And what's going to happen is that he will still be able to attack. Right now, he's only able to attack with normal attacks, but this is going to change with his constellation. But basically, what this means is that while he is dead for the first time, he is going to enter this soul state. And during that soul state, unless you're able to kill everyone else, otherwise he will always live. And obviously, there's another condition for why he would die as well, which is that in his soul state, he actually lose no point. He actually lose 3% of max HP per a quarter of a second. So basically, 1 second he's going to lose 12%. And in that basically means you can live a maximum 8 or 9 seconds in a soul state. However, there's also some other effects which is basically saying, since like for example, he can recover HP if he is, let's say, if an enemy dies, etc. So basically, the trick with Santos is that when he do enter the soul state, you kind of want him to do maximum amount of damage and also try to wipe out enemies night so that you are able to then recover HP and then therefore make your senators live even longer in this soul state, etc. So that's basically kind of the main, I guess, game strategy or game plan for senators. Then we move on to his close. The first one is HP reduction from terrible providence. That's his ultimate, I believe. Yeah, it's his ultimate. So basically now you reduce 15% HP limit, which is quite nice. Then the last three is all to do with his uh, well, it's not all to do with a certain skill, but it's kind of helping with this passive. But basically, what happens is that whenever Santos releases a skill, it increases max HP internally by 30%, which doesn't sound very good because you are not actually healing. However, what it really does is that it helps massively towards his passive because before right now what you can see is the only way for him to reliably trigger this passive is that he need to cut down the HP limit of the enemies, which he can. However, it's not going to be consistent. However, now what's going to happen is that you actually do have a consistent way of lowering your own HP percentage because even though you're not healing yourself, you're increasing your own max HP by 30%. So basically, after using any skills for a couple of times, it's almost going to be guaranteed that your HP percentage is going to be lower than the enemies, and therefore you'll always be triggering your kind of crit and also damage bonus all the time, which is very very nice, and that makes Santos hit extremely hard. All right, then we move on to level 20, which basically when he attacks an enemy with higher percentage than himself, he is now going to get even more buff. attack and attacking speed. So now he's going to get increasingly stronger and stronger. And at the highest level, he also gains life drain penetration. This is massive. Penetration ignores defense and shield, etc., which is going to be extremely useful because he's going to hit extremely hard. And also, life drain is also very useful mainly because of the fact that this is going to make his soul state last even longer. Because in his soul state, he's going to lose the HP passively, and if you are not able to bring his HP up quick enough in order to kind of counteract his own natural loss of HP, then what's going to happen is that he will just die in his soul state, which is not something you want. You actually want him to live really long time as possible because he can then constantly reduce the enemy's max HP limit, etc. So this life drain is ridiculously good in helping him to survive longer in his soul state. So very nice. I definitely recommend you want to max out his clothes if you can. Constellation. So this is all to do with his trigger skill. Basically, this is in his soul state. First of all, when any enemy dies, recover 60% max HP, which is nice. But to be honest, this is not the most sustainable way. The most sustainable way of him actually regaining HP is more from life drain, etc. But this is still a nice to have bonus. Then 9 out of 9 is where it makes him ridiculously strong. Once again, it's now that he can also use skills and arcane, which is the ultimate. And now basically means he literally have like immortality because before, even though he is have a bit of immortality and never die, he can only use normal attack. So yes, he's annoying, but he's not gonna really change the flow of the game too much in Soul State. But with 9 out of 9 Constellation, he is just basically himself, right? He now literally have no restriction whatsoever in terms of how much damage he can do. And I already mentioned he does ridiculous amount of damage with all of those attacking buff he's giving to himself. So this is going to be an absolutely game changer. So you definitely want 9 out of 9 for Thanatos Constellation as well. All right, now let's move on to Araya. So basically for Araya, you want to focus on all of the attacking ones. Quite straightforward because he doesn't really care about defense. If he dies, then that's fine. He enters soul state. As long as he have high enough attack and he can get back all of those HP back through life drain, then you don't really care about him being as the soul state. So therefore, attacking stats is definitely what you want to stack up in all of your area because in some sense, with that high life drain, investing in his attack is kind of also indirectly investing to his defense. So that's why you also want to stack them. I'm also going to give very good mentions to Fastest Wind and also Ferocious Fire. Those are the ones which increase attacking speed. Once again, the faster he attack, he would be able to drain life back quicker. So once again, that's really nice. And also because he lose HP every single second, so the faster he attack basically helps to alleviate that kind of risk as well. So that, for example, you lose too much HP passively, then what you're able to life drain back. So you definitely want to have fastest wind and ferocious as fire. And other than that, just put kind of all of the attacking stats or maybe crit ones on the Senators. Now, in terms of artifact, you want to put the ones which are able to increase crit, life drain, that kind of thing. So definitely, once again, focus on more the offensive artifacts rather than defensive ones, which is quite obvious. But once again, it's kind of just helping with the life drains to make sure that he can still survive long enough on the soul state. All right, now let's talk about how to actually play Sentinels in a team. Now, who are the best teammates for him, etc. I don't have Thanatos, which is why I am going to use Pandora to represent him instead. And the reason why I use Pandora is, first of all, she's also a dark character, so, for formation bonus, etc., you'll be essentially the same. Um, but also, the more important reason, I guess, is that you should never ever play Thanatos in the same team with Pandora. Because basically, what Pandora does is her ultimate focus on the character on the field, both your own team and also the enemy team. Chief would focus on the one with the lowest HP percentage. However, what Thanatos does is he is going to reduce all of the HP limit of all of the enemies, and what that basically means is the enemies are all going to have higher HP percentage as a result, and that is going to make your Pandora turn into more of a healing character rather than like a damage dealer, which potentially, maybe what you want to do. But most of the time, I actually find Pandora to be a lot more useful as a damage dealer because she's really able to kill out a lot of characters by having all five of her ultimate attacks all concentrate on just one unit, etc. So normally I actually find like despite the fact Pandora is a assist unit or support unit, she actually deal ridiculous amount of damage, and I normally actually think of her as a damage dealer as a result, and that's why I don't think she's a very good pairing with Thanatos. The other reason is obviously also because Pandora eats away the HP of everyone else passively, and when you come to Thanatos, because you actually want him to survive quite long under his soul state, you don't really want to make him lose even more HP on top of what he's already losing himself. So that's why like Pandora is going to be a really bad fit with Santos, and you should never play them together. And on that note, there are also some other characters that you should never play with Santos together. Mainly also the ones that kind of trigger off the enemy having a low HP percentage, etc. So a good example I can think of would be Deal. Deal, for example, going into a hunting state when the enemy has a lower HP percentage than himself. So you want to avoid pairing him up with Thanatos because Thanatos is actually going to make the enemy have higher HP percentage than normal. The other one would be the one of the other new knight that has been released, which is Zelos. Zelos also activate his passive when the enemy is I believe like under 50 or 40% HP. So once again, you do not want to pair him up with Thanatos because Thanatos is going to make it really, really difficult for that to actually trigger. So yeah, so those are some of the characters you definitely want to avoid pairing up with Thanatos. Now, in terms of what you actually want to pair with Thanatos, another thing, in terms of where you want to place Thanatos, whether up front or in the back, in all honesty, you can place him anywhere because he does have this kind of soul state, so that even if he dies, he will still survive for quite a long time. So potentially, you may want to use him up front in order to kind of absorb the extra normal attack, etc. But my honest suggestion is that I actually think he will still be better off in the back, and the reason is that let's say if I have him up front and I have another unit up front. Who should I pick? Let me say I have Sagittarius, right? Um, if Thanatos has been killed off, so yes, Thanatos can absorb some of the normal attacks if he is actually placed up front. However, as soon as he goes into the soul state, he would no longer be targetable. So before, what happens is you could use Thanatos to absorb or take 3 of the enemy's normal attack. However, as soon as he goes into soul state, all 5 of the enemy's normal attack is all going to go into Sagittarius, and that's going to make him into a really dangerous situation. So if you do want to play Santos up front, it's generally recommended. I mean, regardless where you play Santos, but the general rule of thumb for Santos is that you want all of your other teammates to be very self-sustaining, so that even if Santos hides away in his soul state, you wouldn't be hurt too much by the fact that the enemy is kind of using 5 characters or attacking 4 of your characters, making your characters actually taking more damage as a result. So that's why if you do want to play Santos, it's generally recommended you only pair Santos with really bulky characters rather than kind of the more fragile ones. The other thing to bear in mind is because Santos gets insane amount of buff when his HP percentage is lower than the enemy's HP percentage, you don't generally want to use a healer. Obviously, I haven't actually tried this out because I haven't actually have a Santos. But in my theory crafting, I don't think Santos will work well with healers because you could have some really bad situation where you actually healed up Santos too much, and because Santos keep on increasing his HP limit, if you do actually increase his HP too much, you are actually going to be finding it quite hard for his HP to go down again. And then essentially what that means is that you make, first of all, your passive, which basically give him all of those extra buff, completely redundant, and also because he won't die, he won't enter his soul state. So essentially, you're going to waste 2 of his really OP skills by bringing a healer into the team. So that's why I don't think Santos, you actually want to pair him up with any healers. So instead, what I would suggest you pairing up with Santos is first of all move Santos to the back so that you don't have your kind of front row allies taking too much damage. But also you want to essentially pair him up with only characters who are quite self-sustainable, kind of like heal themselves up, but do not heal the whole team. And some of the really classic example would be, first of all, Sagittarius Aurorus. Sagittarius Aurorus have life drain himself. He also have immunity, so normally a lot of time he can actually last a long time, even if you place him up front. But then the other really good options would be, for example, Libra Shura and also Libra Doko, in fact. They will all be very solid choice, and also Saga Light. So in fact, all of these characters can be placed up front, which is very nice. So depending on positioning, you can literally place any of those four characters up front, and even Thanatos as well to some extent. Even though I don't highly recommend that. So and you can literally switch up this formation however way you want, depending on elemental advantage and the enemy positioning. So this is a very flexible team. From that, all four of these characters have really good self-sustain. Like Libra Shuru has kind of like immunity and also HP regeneration built into his kit. Libra Doko also has HP regeneration built into his kit. I already talked about Sagittarius Aurorus. Saga Light also hides away in order to heal HP when his HP drops below like 60 or 30%. So therefore, all of them are very self-sustainable, and that makes a really good pairing with Thanatos. And none of them heal up the rest of the team, and that basically makes your Thanatos, uh, free to increase of his buff as well. So this is actually what I find to be a really strong team. And the other thing is that Liberdoko, for example, actually increase attacking buff, which once again is very useful pairing with Thanatos because Thanatos kind of would really appreciate from that extra attacking speed, extra crit damage, etc., so that he can heal back even more through his life strength. So this is a very strong team. It also works really well when you need to fill in multiple teams because essentially it frees you a slot of having a healer in your team. Sometimes you may find it actually hard to juggle around healers amongst let's say 3 teams or 5 teams, etc. Because right now in the game, to be honest, there aren't too many good healers. But this basically allows you to actually fill the team without any healers at all and still function extremely well. And the other thing I also want to point out is normally I'm not a great fan of Liberdoko and Libershura for the exact reason that they protect themselves very well, but I often find that they do not do enough to help the rest of the team. However, once again, you may already have them really high level because they are actually really strong knights. If you just consider them by themselves, like in a 1v1 scenario, they're absolutely amazing. But just often what I find it really hard to actually place them in a team. And with Santos actually available, like I said, you can actually find a really good use case for both Liberdoko and Libershuru. And once again, that kind of help you to balance out your, let's say, multiple teams with 3 teams or 5 teams, etc. Because now you are then able to utilize some of the other knights who you previously, even though very strong, you may have never been able to use properly in a team. So this is another value that Santos is able to unlock massively. So that's very nice. And now I'm just gonna wrap up this video talking about whether Santos is worth pulling. Now, I already mentioned quite a few benefits of Santos, kind of, the fact that you're able to fill a team with some of the more selfish knights, I guess, and also the fact that you don't actually need a healer, which is all very good, depending on what is exactly your box. The other pro for Santos is that he is a dark character, and right now, in all honesty, there aren't too many dark characters in the game. I mean, there's only right now six in total, and we just had the new content added into the game as well, which is a dark labyrinth or the dark mazes, etc. And you do want to progress well in that game mode as well. So I'm gonna guess vast majority of players, like for example myself, I didn't really concentrate much on dark element characters because I actually don't think they're very strong in comparison to some of the light element ones. Like if I have to look at all of the dark ones, the only ones I actually think is like really strong and like almost like a solid choice regardless of the situation would be Pandora and Hypnos. Like those two are probably the only ones I would actually recommend people to build up properly. Seiya Arcana is very strong, but you only need a single copy. Evil Sega just not that meta relevant right now either, and Radamansis, I don't find him to be that good right now. He will improve later on when his exclusive arrives, but right now he's just not at a tier 1 level. So right now, to be honest, the dark element is seriously lacking some firepower. So if you do actually want to, let's say, progress far in the dark mazes without waiting on other new dark element characters to be released, and in all honesty, even in the future, there aren't too many good dark element characters. So Thanatos is actually one of the better options if you do want to pull him. So those are some kind of the main reasons for why you may want to get Thanatos. Now, on the flip side, what I am actually going to recommend is that even if you do really want to get Thanatos, I would suggest you actually waiting for the next banner to see what character it is. The reason being is that if you actually look at Google Play, the icon of the Senseiya Legend of Justice app has now actually changed and is now actually showing a picture of Seiya and also the words for 1 year anniversary or something along those lines. And that basically makes me think that in the 1 year anniversary, which is should actually just be in 1 month's time, they may actually release, say, a God Close, who is definitely one of the top tier characters, one of the best characters in the game. And if that's really the case, you really do not want to put on Santos right now. If say a God Close will be the next light and dark character, you really want to save up for say a God Close instead. So that is going to be the reason why I do not recommend you to put on Santos, even though he is very good. And I already mentioned quite a few advantages of him. Even if you really like this character, I would suggest you at least wait for one more banner just to see whether it's going to be, say, a gold close before then kind of deciding which character you want to get. Because honestly, say a gold close is never going to be out of the meta for how strong of a kit he has. Whereas Thanatos is more kind of a really nice character, but it's more like a cherry on top rather than a staple in your team. So that's why, I really do not want you guys to make the rash decision of getting Thanatos just because it's good when, say a God Close could literally just be around the corner in 1 month's time.